The moment Dr. Leah Carter pushed open that hospital door, everything inside her went still. Her husband, Ethan, stood in the delivery room, holding the hand of a woman in labor. Leah froze. She knew that face. It was the same woman she'd seen months ago, in a photo on Ethan's phone, the one he swore meant nothing. In that instant, Leah's world split in two, before she knew the truth and after. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming stories, because what happened next changed everything. For 10 years, Dr. Leah Carter believed she had it all, a husband who adored her, a successful career, and a home filled with laughter. Ethan Carter, charming and ambitious, was the man everyone admired. But somewhere between the late-night meetings and missed anniversaries, something shifted. The warmth in his eyes began to fade. He smiled less. His phone became a secret she wasn't allowed to touch. When Leah asked, he'd say, "Just work, sweetheart." She wanted to believe him. She had to, because admitting otherwise meant accepting that her perfect life might not be so perfect after all. Leah first saw the photo one quiet night, Ethan's phone buzzing on the counter. A woman's face lit up the screen. Sophie Reynolds, his new assistant. Leah asked, and Ethan laughed it off, saying she was just part of a project. But Leah couldn't shake the feeling. Weeks later, she noticed Ethan's scent on nights he claimed to be working late. A hint of perfume that wasn't hers lingered on his shirt. She told herself it was just paranoia, until that hospital call came in. When Leah arrived and saw Sophie on that hospital bed, pain sliced through her chest. Ethan stood frozen, guilt written across his face. Leah whispered, "Why her, Ethan?" He couldn't answer. The truth was there, in the baby's heartbeat echoing through the room. The man she built her life around had been building another one behind her back. Leah walked out of the hospital that night without a word. The world outside felt heavier, quieter. Every memory they'd built replayed in fragments. His laughter, their wedding vows, the home they decorated together. She sat in her car, tears falling onto her lap, whispering, "What do you do when the person you love becomes the reason you're broken?" Days turned into weeks. Ethan begged for forgiveness, but Leah knew trust, once shattered, doesn't heal overnight. She told him softly, "You didn't just break our marriage, Ethan. You broke me." He lowered his head, unable to speak. She left the keys on the table and walked away. Not because she stopped loving him, but because she finally started loving herself. 6 months later, Leah stood outside the same hospital where her heart once shattered. The air smelled of rain and fresh roses. She had learned to smile again, not for anyone else, but for herself. Life had gone on. Her scars had become strength. She looked up at the sunrise and whispered, "Thank you, Ethan, for teaching me what love shouldn't feel like. If you were Leah, what would you have done? Would you have stayed and tried to rebuild or walked away like she did? Tell us your thoughts in the comments, because sometimes the hardest goodbye is the one that finally sets you free." For 10 years, Leah believed she had it all. A husband who adored her, a career that gave her purpose, and a home that felt safe. Every morning began with Ethan's kiss on her forehead and ended with his soft, "Good-night, love." To everyone else, they were the perfect couple, a picture of devotion and stability. Leah never questioned it. She couldn't. Ethan had been her anchor through medical school, through long nights on call, through every sacrifice she made to build their life together. But lately, the silence between them had grown heavier. Ethan's late nights became more frequent, his excuses vaguer. When Leah asked if everything was all right, he'd smile and say, "Just business, you know how it is." She wanted to believe him. She had to, because the alternative, that he was slipping away, was too painful to face. Yet deep down, she felt it, in the way he stopped reaching for her hand, in the way he laughed without looking at her. The distance wasn't loud. It crept in quietly, like fog rolling over familiar ground. And then came the text messages, quick flashes on his screen. "Working late. Don't wait up." Harmless words, at least that's what Leah told herself. But her heart disagreed. It beat harder every time he looked away. And yet, nothing, not the whispers, not the doubt, not the sleepless nights, could have prepared her for the day she'd meet the woman who would change everything. Not at a dinner party, not by accident on the street, but on an operating table, inside the very hospital where Leah had built her life, and where, in a single moment, that life would begin to unravel. It started small, the kind of small things you tell yourself not to overthink. A faint trace of perfume she didn't wear clinging to his jacket. A receipt from a restaurant she'd never been to, dated on a night he claimed to be at a business dinner across town. And then, one evening, while Ethan showered, his phone lit up. A message that made Leah's stomach twist into knots. "You make me feel alive again." Her hands trembled as she read it, her heartbeat echoing in her ears. She waited for him to come out, towel around his shoulders, smile casual as ever. "Ethan," she whispered. "Who is she?" He froze, just for a second, then laughed softly, brushing her hair back. "You're tired, Leah. You've been working too much. You're imagining things." She wanted to believe him. She almost did. But something inside her, that quiet instinct she'd learned to trust in her years as a doctor, told her the truth was standing right in front of her, wrapped in his calm voice and practiced smile. That night, Leah stared at herself in the mirror, fingers brushing the wedding ring she once cherished. For the first time it felt heavy. She slipped it off, placing it gently on the counter, her reflection blurring through quiet tears. Across town, Ethan sat alone in his office, phone in hand, staring at an ultrasound photo with Sophie's name written at the top. He traced the faint outline of a heartbeat, the proof of a secret he could no longer hide. Leah had delivered hundreds of babies in her career. She'd watched countless families begin their stories, but she didn't know that her own husband was about to become a father to someone else. Sophie thought she'd found safety, a hand to pull her out of the chaos she'd been drowning in. She was 29, working long hours, barely making rent, and clinging to a man who made her feel seen for the first time in years. Ethan promised her everything, whispered that he'd leave his wife, that he'd build a home with her, that she wasn't just some secret. And Sophie believed him. She believed in the fantasy of love wrapped in hotel rooms and late-night texts that said, "Just a little longer." She didn't see the storm waiting ahead. When she found out she was pregnant, she called him, voice shaking with both fear and hope. But Ethan didn't pick up. The messages went unanswered. The man who once promised forever suddenly vanished into silence. She waited, days then weeks, watching the world move on without her. Until one night, pain gripped her stomach like a warning. Her water broke. Alone, terrified, she called for an ambulance. The sirens echoed through the rain, carrying her toward a future she never expected. Across town, Leah was halfway through a double shift, exhaustion pressing behind her eyes. The hospital was alive with chaos, heart monitors beeping, nurses rushing from room to room, the smell of antiseptic thick in the air. She washed her hands, pulled on her gloves, and prepared for her next patient. A young woman in labor, frightened, barely able to speak through the contractions. Leah's voice softened. "You're safe here, sweetheart. I've got you." She couldn't know, not yet, that the woman gripping the edge of that hospital bed was the same one who'd been haunting her nightmares, the woman in the photo, the one who'd shattered her marriage. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. Inside, two lives, two women, were about to collide in a way that would change them both forever. Sophie thought she'd found safety, not realizing she was walking straight into a storm. She was young, hopeful, and tired of struggling. The bills never stopped coming, and every dream she had seemed to end with disappointment. Then came Ethan, older, confident, the kind of man who spoke with assurance and made her believe that maybe, just maybe, she could stop surviving and finally start living. He told her she was special, that what they had was real, that he was only staying with his wife until the time was right. Sophie believed him. She fell in love not just with Ethan, but with the idea of what he represented: stability, warmth, belonging. For the first time in years, she felt like she mattered to someone. But when the test turned positive and the word pregnant appeared in trembling hands, everything changed. Ethan's sweet words became short replies. His calls grew fewer. Then one day, silence. He didn't pick up. He didn't write. The man who once promised to protect her disappeared when she needed him the most. Sophie tried to stay strong, convincing herself he'd come back. But as her belly grew and her savings shrank, reality pressed harder than the dream she once believed in. And then, one stormy night, the contractions began. Alone, frightened, she called for help, her voice shaking as the pain took over. She didn't know that the hospital she was being rushed to was the same one where Ethan's wife worked. Meanwhile, across town, Leah's shift was pushing past its 13th hour. The rain outside tapped endlessly against the hospital windows as thunder rolled in the distance. The maternity ward was crowded, newborn cries echoing down the hallways, nurses calling out vitals, machines humming in steady rhythm. Leah rubbed the back of her neck, exhaustion mixing with routine. She'd seen it all before: the chaos, the fear, the miracle of birth repeating night after night. When the next patient was wheeled in, she didn't look at the chart right away. She simply pulled on her gloves and whispered, "You're in good hands, I promise." The young woman's eyes darted around the room, terrified, clutching her swollen belly. Leah reached for her hand, steady and warm, unaware that destiny had just placed her face to face with the truth she'd been trying not to see. Outside, lightning flashed. Inside, 2 stories, one built on lies, the other on love, were about to collide under the same hospital roof. Leah walked into the room, her mind running on autopilot. Another patient, another delivery, another long night. The nurse handed her the chart, and Leah glanced down as she adjusted her gloves. But then her breath caught in her throat. The name stared back at her like a cruel echo from the past. Sophie Reynolds. Her pulse spiked. The walls seemed to close in around her as she pushed open the curtain. And there he was, Ethan, standing beside the bed, pale and frozen, his hand clutching Sophie's. For a split second, no one moved. The air turned heavy, pressing against Leah's chest. She stepped forward slowly, voice trembling but firm. "What are you doing here?" Ethan's lips parted, words barely forming. "Leah, I can explain." Sophie's eyes widened in horror, realization washing over her. "Ethan," she whispered. "She's the doctor?" Leah let out a bitter laugh that didn't sound like her own. "Apparently." The room fell silent. Only the beeping of the monitors filled the space, each sound sharper than the last. For a moment, the hospital didn't feel sterile anymore. It felt suffocating, thick with betrayal, guilt, and irony so cruel it burned. Leah's hands shook as she snapped on her gloves, the sound slicing through the tension like a blade. Ethan stepped back, shame clouding his face. Sophie began to cry, her voice breaking through shallow breaths. Leah looked at them both, every memory flashing through her mind. The dinners, the laughter, the lies. She wanted to scream, to walk out, to make them both disappear. But another sound pulled her back. The monitor's steady beep quickening, Sophie's contractions growing stronger. Leah took a deep breath. Her heart was shattering, but her training took over. In that room, she wasn't a betrayed wife. She was a doctor, and there was a life to save. Her voice steadied as she called for the nurse. "We need to move fast," she said. Her tone was cold, professional, unshakable. But behind her mask, her jaw tightened, tears burning in her eyes. Ethan tried to step closer, whispering her name, but Leah cut him off without looking up. Not now. The storm outside raged harder. lightning flashing through the window as if the sky itself was bearing witness to the moment everything came undone. As Sophie screamed in pain and Ethan stood helpless in the corner, Leah guided the delivery with trembling hands and a breaking heart. Every cry, every heartbeat, every word of instruction echoed like a memory she'd never escape. And as the baby's first cry filled the room, Leah felt her world collapse quietly inside her. She looked down at the newborn, innocent, fragile, blameless, and whispered to herself, "You didn't ask for any of this." Then she lifted her gaze toward Ethan, eyes hollow, voice calm, but cutting. "It's done." The room fell silent again. Ethan took a step forward, but Leah didn't move. Her duty was over. Her heart wasn't. The question hung in the air like a verdict yet to be spoken. Would Leah walk away, or would she stay long enough to watch the life her husband created without her? In that moment, Leah stood on the edge of two worlds, the woman and the doctor. One wanted to run, to let the pain swallow everything. The other had sworn an oath to protect life, no matter whose it was. Sophie was slipping, her pulse fading, her breaths uneven. The nurse's voice cracked through the chaos. "Doctor, we're losing her pressure." Leah's fingers trembled around the scalpel. Her heart screamed, "Walk away," but her soul whispered, "Do your duty." With a deep breath, she steadied her hands. The storm outside roared in rhythm with the monitors inside. One life breaking apart, another fighting to begin. Every movement was mechanical, but every heartbeat was personal. As she worked, flashes of Ethan's betrayal flickered in her mind. His lies, his touch, his promises. She swallowed the anger, the grief, the humiliation, not because he deserved mercy, but because the woman on that table, despite everything, deserved a chance to live. And in that chaos, Leah remembered who she was, not Ethan's wife, not the victim, but the healer. When the baby's cry finally pierced the air, the world seemed to stop. It was a boy, small, fragile, and alive. Ethan covered his face, tears breaking through the mask of shame. Leah looked down at the newborn, expecting hatred to rise. But instead something else filled her chest. Compassion, the kind that hurts, the kind that reminds you that love, in its purest form, can't be destroyed by betrayal. As she handed the baby to the nurse, Leah's voice was soft, steady, and unrecognizable, like someone who had walked through fire and come out the other side. "Take care of him," she whispered, "because sometimes strength doesn't sound like forgiveness. It sounds like silence." She didn't scream. She didn't throw things. She simply walked out, because some storms end not with thunder, but with silence. The hospital corridor felt endless. As Leah removed her gloves, the smell of antiseptic still clinging to her skin. Behind her, the cries of the newborn echoed faintly, a sound she knew she'd never forget. She didn't look back. She didn't have to. Everything she needed to leave behind was already burning in her heart. Days turned into weeks. Divorce papers were signed and delivered with the same precision she once used to deliver life. No anger, no revenge, just an ending written in quiet resignation. Ethan tried to call, to explain, to apologize, but Leah never answered. Some wounds didn't need closure, they needed distance. Ethan's perfect world began to crumble. The same lies he told at home had followed him to his business, and one by one they surfaced. Investors pulled out. Partners turned away. His empire, built on secrets, collapsed under the weight of truth. Meanwhile, Sophie recovered. She went home with the baby, the child born from deception, yet carrying innocence untainted by it. Late at night she'd rock him to sleep, whispering apologies he could never understand. Every coo, every tiny breath reminded her of the woman who saved her, the woman she destroyed. Guilt became her lullaby. And Leah, she found peace in solitude. The world saw her as composed, strong, unshaken, but inside she was learning how to breathe again, to live without the noise of betrayal, to heal in silence. But the story wasn't over yet, because fate had one more cruel twist to deliver. 1 year later, the world had grown quiet around Leah. Her home was smaller now, simpler, but peaceful. No more echoes of arguments, no more ghosts of what was lost. Just quiet mornings and the soft hum of a life rebuilt. Then, one afternoon, she found it. An envelope, yellowed and worn, tucked between bills and hospital mail. The handwriting stopped her cold. Ethan's. Her fingers trembled as she opened it, the paper crackling like a memory waking up. He'd written it before that night, before the delivery, before everything shattered. In it, he confessed everything. The affair, the lies, the shame that ate at him. He wrote that he never meant for Leah to find out the way she did, that he didn't know she'd be the doctor in that room. And at the end, in shaky ink, were the words, "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope one day you find peace." Leah sat there for hours, the letter trembling in her hands. By the time she folded it back into the envelope, tears had dried on her cheeks. A few weeks later, news came that Ethan had died, a car accident, alone on a rainy night. She never replied, but she kept that letter, and every night, before she turned off the light, she read it, not because she missed him, but because it reminded her of what she survived. Because forgiveness isn't about them, it's about letting yourself breathe again. Months turned into a year, and the hospital halls that once echoed with pain now carried Leah's laughter again. She stood before a room of young medical interns, her white coat crisp, her tone steady but kind. Her eyes, once heavy with betrayal, now held something softer, wisdom. As she guided a new doctor's trembling hands during a delivery, she whispered, "It's not just about saving lives. It's about healing hearts, too." That day, Leah delivered another baby, and for the first time in a long while, she smiled, truly smiled. She had learned that pain doesn't define you. What you do with it does. Leah didn't lose that night. She reclaimed herself. She found strength not in anger, but in grace. What about you? What would you have done if you were Leah? Could you save the woman who destroyed your life? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if this story touched you like it did us, hit that like button. It truly helps us reach more people. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful emotional stories every week. Stories that remind us that even in heartbreak, there's always a chance to begin again.